Our guest today hails from Needham, Massachusetts, and graduated from the United States Naval Academy. She was selected for astronaut training in 1998. She traveled to space for the first time in December 2006 to June 2007, spending 6 months on the International Space Station. While on board, she had 4 untethered spacewalks known as Extravehicular Activity, or EVA. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Suni Williams.
It's a pretty cool program. A lot of people think, just because the space shuttle stopped flying, we're not doing anything at NASA anymore, and that's so far from the truth. Part of the reason we retired the space shuttle is because it was old. It's 1970s technology before you guys were born. And some of us here remember some of the computer systems which were on it, which were a whole lot less power than probably your watch or your iPhone that you have right now. So it was time, because it's time to take advantage of this new technology that you guys are living in and your creative ideas to make the next spacecraft. So we're in the process of making our next spacecraft, which you probably have heard about, Orion. And it will hopefully, go take us, first of all, to the space station. It's sort of a test bed. It's where we practice everything. And then, probably to the moon, probably in the vicinity of an asteroid. It will probably be, the stepping stone for us to make a spacecraft that will go on to Mars. So your future is huge.
How did the spider first handle going, not having gravity?
So the spiders were awesome. I'm glad you asked that question. So I just was teasing you guys to hopefully ask about it. This was actually a Google YouTube experiment. I don't know if you guys had heard about it. They just put out a request for across the world for kids to put a 1.5-minute video of some experiment that they could adapt to space. And so this guy in Egypt, 18-year-old kid, when the country was changing governments and having all of its upheaval, he studied himself and thought, we have these Egyptian jumping spiders. I think that they won't survive. And they did, obviously, like I said. So the short, jump to the end of the book, yes, they did survive.
What degrees does it help to get to the astronaut program?
Any engineering, science, math, seriously, any of that.
So any basic degree?
Yeah, STEM type stuff, really.
Okay.
And I should have mentioned, we have 3 teachers in the program, as well as Barbara Morgan, who flew as Christy McCullough's backup from Challenger, if you remember way back when. So we even have teachers, But usually some of them, all of them have a science background. Like Joe, for example, is geology background. Dottie is astronomy. I can't remember what Ricky does. He was lived all over the world. But they're people who have science backgrounds.
So basically any math?
Math and science, math, science, engineering.
Okay, thank you.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Hunter with LEHS, and I'm here with Captain Williams from the NASA Space Program. I'm here to ask you a few questions. My first question is, how long have you been with NASA?
Hi, Hunter. I've been with NASA since 1998. I was selected in the 17th group of astronauts, and so been there for a little while, 15 years, and so it's been a long time, but I've had 2 wonderful space flights while I've been there.
How long did it take you to become an astronaut, with all the schooling and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I graduated from high school in 1983. I know that sounds like a really long time ago to you guys. And then went to college right after that, graduated from college in 1987. I joined the Navy, and so went to flight school. That took about a couple years to get my Navy wings, and then started flying for the Navy for a while. As a result of a lot of fun I had flying helicopters, I went to test pilot school, which is sort of like a graduate program. It's 1 year, probably about 2 years squished into 1 year, so pretty high intensity year of flying and learning about how aircraft work and writing reports. And when I finished that, I started testing aircraft, and while I was doing that, I was shore-based. So I had the opportunity to do some nighttime graduate work, and so I got my master's degree at Florida Institute of Technology in engineering management, and was working on my second master's aerospace engineering when I got picked up by NASA.
Have you always wanted to be an astronaut? Have you ever wanted to be something different?
No, yeah, when I was growing up, I never thought I was going to be an astronaut. That was like the farthest thing from my ideas of things that I could possibly be. My dad was a doctor and a first-generation Indian, came over from India. And so that biology was sort of set in my mind, or engineering. His brother was an engineer. And so looking for college, I ended up going to the Naval Academy. honestly, because I didn't get into my first choice, which was in the Boston area, to go be a veterinarian, which is what I wanted to be. So I just sort of went with my Navy career, and then it ended up taking me piece by piece to fly helicopters, and then to go to test pilot school. And at test pilot school was the first time I came to Texas to Johnson Space Center and met an astronaut, and that's what piqued my interest. Like, oh my gosh, you know, I have some of the same skill set that those guys do, so maybe this is a possibility. So it took a little while for me. I was probably in my mid-20s before I even realized that it was a possibility that I could become an astronaut. I had no idea before that.
What kind of schooling do you have to go to be an astronaut as far as education goes?
Yeah, so when I first got there, and you know, from my background as a Navy pilot, you know, I sort of thought everybody was pilots. That is absolutely not true. When I got there, I realized, wow, I could have done a ton of things to become an astronaut. We have classic scientists, of course, physicists, chemists, biology, biochemistry. We also have all types of engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, aerospace engineers. We have people from different parts of the military, of course, the Navy, the Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, also, and the Army. Helicopter pilots as well as jet pilots, submariners, divers, a SEAL. We even have a Navy SEAL who's flying in space right now. We have doctors, and we have even a veterinarian. So little did I know way back when that you could have done any of these fields in science and math, technology, engineering that would get you to become an astronaut.
How much science and math is actually involved in the space program?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So a lot of people come with that background, and I think it's that foundation that allows you to do the things that we're doing, because it's not necessarily solving equations and doing bookwork while you're up in space. It's more of doing a little bit of construction, but when you're doing construction, when we were building the space station, you still needed to know the principles that allow you to do the things that you're doing, how the spacesuit works, how to, if there was something that was going to go wrong with the spacesuit, the space station, the space shuttle, you could get in there with the tools and be able to fix it. So that's where all that foundation, that background comes from. Of course, you're working with people on the ground, but you are the hands and the eyes on the problem that you might have. And you pretty well reverse your things that you plan on doing, but there's a lot of unplanned things that happen. And like I mentioned, there's no Home Depot, there's no Lowe's up there, so you got to figure out with the equipment that you have how you're going to solve the problems and fix the things that you have. And sometimes your impressions and your observations are key to the guys on the ground coming up with a solution. And then you work with the guys on the ground hand in hand. So, like I said, you don't necessarily solve equations, but you do have to know principles of how things work and be able to take observations and clearly communicate that to the folks on the ground so we can solve the problems that we run into. What
do astronauts do when you're not in space? Like, do you have a second job, or what do you do?
Yeah, so there's only a couple people in space at a time. When we had the shuttle, we'd had 7 people up in space, but now we're launching with our Russian counterparts. So at any given time, we probably only have 2 or 3 Americans in space. But it's continual. So there's a lot of us who are sitting on the ground, right? So it takes about really 2.5 years with the travel to the different partner agencies to get ready for a space flight. So there's a group of people who are training, because you want to have everybody ready for the next couple of years as they're getting ready to train. So probably about 15 people are in training and traveling around and learning their specific mission. And in the meantime, we have newer people who came to the astronaut office, finished their first 1.5, 2 years of baseline training. That's just learning how spacecraft work, what the different agencies do, what type of payloads we have up there, just sort of like a broad general thing. So that takes about 1.5 to 2 years. So we have folks doing that, just general stuff. And then once you finish that, we have advanced training, because you need to know how to use the robotic arm. So that's a little bit more advanced, and we only have so many simulators of that, so we cycle people through that. We also need to know how to do a spacewalk. We only have one big pool, so only a couple people can train a day, so we cycle through people through that. So those are things we're generally always training. And then we also have a technical job, which means, like, if I've flown before, so I have some expertise in how we might create the next science experiment, how we might put that together, how we might make a timeline for the next spacewalk that's coming up this summer. So some of the people who have experience will go back and help the people who are writing the procedures for the things that are going to come up, help them do that a little bit more efficiently based on their experience that they've had. So as a matter of fact, this summer I'm going to Russia to go live there for a year. We have a group of folks, American, Europeans, Japanese, Canadians, who are training in Moscow, and there's one head astronaut out there that coordinates with our Russian space agency, their training, and so I'll be doing that for a year. So everybody has a technical job while they're waiting in line to go fly, and we're all trying to mentor and help each other out and share our experience.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Hunter. It's been fun here being at
Yep.
Little Elm.